Alright, here we are with our next instalment of Rossett History GCSE Extra, and this time we're going to look at a very important man for the civil rights movement who's never really featured much so far, so we think he's going to be important, and he appears a couple of times on the specification, as you can see. I'm going to run down 10 different ways that MLK, or Martin Luther King, was crucial for the civil rights movement. Firstly, he led the MIA and the SCLC. These are two huge civil rights groups. The MIA is the group that coordinated the Montgomery bus boycott, which sort of laid the groundwork for huge gains in civil rights later on. And the SCLC is the group that came out of the Montgomery bus boycott and tried to take the civil rights campaign all across the South rather than just in Montgomery, to continue the fight, if you like. Now, he helped to set both things up, and he led both of those groups. In at number 2, we've got the fact that he was absolutely committed to nonviolence, which was really popular with the people in power who could actually change things. If he'd been more violent, he would have been less popular and attracted less support. Even when his house was firebombed and his kids were inside the house at the time, 300 black people turned up, angry, furious people in Montgomery with weapons in hand. I mean, if somebody attacked my family, I would struggle, I think, to remain non-violent, although I would try my best to follow that example. Martin Luther King was certainly a great man in able to control himself, tell the crowd who were out for revenge on his behalf to go home. He said, "We believe in non-violence. Go home, take your weapons back, and if anybody threatens you, react non-violently." What a man. Because he was highly educated and well-spoken, he could connect with the people in power, the people who had the power to change things, the people in the media, the politicians, white rich people in the North, essentially. But he was also, because of his job as a minister in charge of a church, able to connect with black people in the South who suffered from a lack of education, and he could unite educated people lacking education, white people, black people, northerners, southerners, all together to fight for civil rights. He was a real unifying person. Not to be underestimated is that Martin Luther King retained the support of the media until his campaign in the North at the end, but having the media on side helps to change people's opinions. He was an outstanding public speaker. Almost everybody has heard of the "I have a dream" speech. It was that good and that influential. That helps to gain support as well for the civil rights movement. Linked to being a great public speaker, he was inspirational, but also his non-violent methods were working. His non-violent methods and also gaining publicity to highlight the injustice in the South. It provided a blueprint that others could copy. People, just for example, like the Greensboro sit-in students, they copied his non-violence. That helped them to gain support. So he provided that blueprint. Blueprint is something that people can copy to have a similar sort of success. Of course, we need to mention his less successful period when he tried to gain economic equality in the North. It was less successful because he lacked the support of the people in power, and because he'd come to the North, which is where they were from. And it's also harder to sort of achieve economic power. If you get people to vote, they're either voting or they're not. To get black people economic equality is a lot harder to measure and to achieve. But he did again draw attention to and gain publicity for the economic inequalities for black people. He took difficult decisions. One of the biggest events of the civil rights movement was the campaign in Birmingham, Alabama, where Bull Connor, the man in charge of the emergency services, decided that he was going to let the firemen set super powerful hoses on the protesters, and the police let police dogs on the protesters, who were just marching peacefully for greater civil rights, especially in Birmingham, Alabama. Martin Luther King did nothing to stop school children from joining him in this protest, so it must have been a difficult decision to take because he would have known some of them would have been hurt. But it did create huge publicity, whether it was the right decision or the wrong, around the world because of the shocking images that came through. Maybe Martin Luther King's finest hour came in the March on Washington, which, as part of the SCLC, he helped to organise, going to Washington, where the politicians are. And 250,000 people turned up, including tens of thousands of white people who supported the movement. Lots of pop stars. It was broadcast on the television, and that is, of course, where he gave his amazing speech. It is perhaps no coincidence that shortly after this, the 1964 Civil Rights Act came into being. So there you are. 10 reasons why Martin Luther King was important in the civil rights movement.